Back in September, this channel exclusively leaked bombshell Zen 5 and Zen 6 information that finally set a fact-based baseline for what gamers should expect out of upcoming Ryzen products for the next few years. Namely that, while Zen 5 will likely bring a higher IPC increase than what Zen 4 brought over Zen 3, there's no evidence that AMD is getting remotely close to some of the wildest claims I've seen out there, like that Zen 5 will bring an over 30% IPC increase. It was important, I think, for this channel to put out that video when this channel did, to dispel the clickbait leaks that we always see during a silly season of hardware leaks. And the silly season usually is during fall. What it all comes down to is that, yeah, well, Zen 5 could get to around a 20% IPC increase, or maybe higher if AMD beats their targets a ton. That still would be beating their targets. And so a 30% IPC increase is out of the realm of possibility, outside of AVX multi-threading workloads where Zen 5 should dominate Intel next year. And yeah, this was backed up by actual diagrams, not trust me bro leaks, and then followed up by more Zen 5 diagrams detailing how both the base architecture and the EPYC design is going to work for Turin, but still not for Zen 6. Well, that is until today. That's right, today I will be leaking diagrams of Zen 6 Venice variants that proves 32 core chiplets are coming after Zen 5, in addition to a lot of other incredible things that basically point to Zen 6 being the gaming architecture to wait for if you're one of those people that insists on trying to wait for the perfect thing for gaming. And I say that a kind of a dismissing way because, every Zen architecture that's come out has been a decent performance increase in all metrics. And I don't really see either Zen 5 or Zen 6 being the big one to really wait for. You can always wait for something new, and I think both of them will uplift gaming performance a ton for different reasons, which let me explain here. You see, in that September leak, I basically detailed that Zen 5 is going to be another standard uplift in a similar vein to Zen 3. In other words, it's getting higher IPC through a full redesign of the architecture like Zen 3 got. It's going to get some new tweaks there as well to massively boost multi-threading performance, especially in AVX workloads, and it will get higher core counts on server again, and actually on laptop this time as well, but not necessarily on desktop. And fundamentally, Zen 5, therefore, on desktop is going to look physically similar to how Zen 3 and Zen 4 did, an I/O die and 2 CCDs. But that's where Zen 6 is going to change things as it moves to an entirely new chiplet design, like how Zen 2 did over Zen Plus. And although the IPC increase for Zen 6 over Zen 5 isn't expected to be as crazy as what Zen 5 is bringing, it could end up being just as important to gamers due to how many things are being changed in the architecture to benefit latency. You see, you have to remember that IPC does not equal gaming performance. Vcache added 0 IPC to both the Zen 3 5800X3D and the Zen 4 7800X3D. And yet, despite there being a 0% IPC increase, gaming performance went up by double digits, sometimes 30% or more in extreme scenarios. And so, just to summarize here, Zen 5 is going to have a traditional IPC increase that's quite large, in addition to large multi-threading performance increases, really just perfecting AMD's SMT implementation. And then Zen 6 is going to boost IPC by a respectable amount, maybe about as much as Zen 2 did, above 10%, but it's going to do latency improvements that should make the gaming performance itself, despite not being a huge IPC increase, be far, far higher and really just perfect the overall Zen architecture itself before Zen moves on to something that might not even be called Zen. That's right, I have got whispers of what's going to happen in a post-Zen world, confirmation and pictures of 32 core CCDs for Zen 6, and much, much more. But first, an ad from Micro Center. Micro Center has been a sponsor of Moore's Law is Dead for a very long time, and that's because if you can get to one of those stores, they really just have the best deals. Right now, I know they're giving away free RAM with tons of different products. And well, if you build a new PC right now with parts from Micro Center and send them a picture, they'll just give you $25 off on top of all of the other deals and discounts they're doing right now. Like also selling the Creality Ender 3 S1 3D printer for only $149. And there's tons of other holiday deals in a link in the description below. And they're actually opening up a new store in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2024. If you just visit that store, they'll give you a free USB. You just have to show up to a new store. They give you a free flash drive. They're always giving away free things, whether it's RAM or flash drives. They're always giving you tons of different deals that stack on top of each other. And I honestly do think that right now is probably the best time to build a PC in, well, maybe in 4 or 5 years. So if you're going to do it, go to a Micro Center, click those links in the description to support the channel and get as many discounts as you can. And just remember, clicking on those links helps the channel alone. Check out Micro Center today. All right, now, before I get to the leak, please note that as usual, when it comes to a sensitive set of information, I have changed a few things around that I'll be showing you, like slightly changed the shades of colors from a piece of documentation, messed with the font a bit, shifted the pixels around, and obfuscated a few things to protect my sources. But what you are looking at here is part of a larger diagram for a product that was called EPYC-E, which I believe the E stands for edge computing. And while I don't feel like it's safe to show the whole thing, I will show this snippet here that clearly calls out Venice SP8 CCDs and I/O dies. And then in addition to that, EPYC-E can use networking compute dies from Pensando Selena IP. And then there is also clearly called out that the EPYC-E products can be used in the SP8 socket, or they come in BGA variants as well. And now I want to explain what all of this really means so far. So when it comes to SP8, I believe that SP8 is to SP7, which is the Zen 5 128 or 192 core Zen 5 Turin socket. I believe SP8 to SP7 is what SP6 is to SP5. In other words, SP7 Venice is the big socket coming in a couple of years. It's a successor to Turin and Genoa, and then SP8 Venice, well, this is the successor to Serrano or Sienna, and EPYC-E then therefore shares mostly with the smaller socket variant than with the big one, but I honestly have no reason to doubt that all versions, or should I say all Venice sockets can utilize the same likely 2 nanometer unified 32 core CCDs, and I also wouldn't be surprised if big Venice SP7 simply connects a bunch of these I/O dies and CCDs to make a bigger 256 core product. You see, if I put these together like this, you can clearly see, and this is what I saw in one of the pieces of documentation, that these I/O dies can be put together to have a total of 4 32 core CCDs on SP8. Although I do want to emphasize that I think it's also very likely that, while EPYC-E and SP8 Venice can use 2 I/O dies and up to 4 CCD chiplets, that the SP7, again, that's the big socket that will succeed Genoa and Turin, that version might end up having its own multi-I/O dies that are larger than the ones in SP8. I want to be clear that the documentation that I'm leaking today talks about sharing SP8 I/O dies and CCDs. And while I'm like 99.9% sure that these CCDs are shared between all EPYC products, it wouldn't surprise me if the larger EPYC socket had its own I/O dies that are not shared with the stuff I'm talking about today. And you want to see something else cool? Well, if I go back to the diagrams that we were just looking at, you see these CCDs here, they don't have to be CCDs. These are able to be interchanged with things called networking compute dies. You know, I'm willing to show this on screen here. And then there were also other diagrams I saw for FPGA dies, AI engine dies, and many other things. Again, I'm only going to show the networking compute die on screen today. I don't feel like it's necessary to show all documentation I've received because that could give away my sources more easily. But I think it's important just to understand that whether it's the bigger socket or the smaller one, it seems like not only can they share these massive unified 32 core CCDs, but those 32 core CCDs can be swapped out for a host of other chiplets. And alright, I will round out this part of the video by throwing one more snippet on screen next to everything else that clearly calls out 32 Zen 6 cores in the entry-level variant of EPYC-E, and I must note, the entry-level variant only has a single SP8 Venice I/O die, which can only interface with 2 chiplets, and because this is the Edge EPYC family, one of those chiplets has to be a networking die. That's the entire point. And so that leaves only room for 1 core chiplet, which means each core chiplet, yes, it must have 32 cores per chiplet. And then if you look at the EPYC-E standard, it has 64 Zen 6 cores total, but from what I saw in the diagram, it had an NCD, 2 32-core chiplets, and then it also had room for an FPGA die that they expected to be the standard customization. But I expect it could go a little higher, and I'd assume the SP8 Venice can go up to 128 cores as well. And well, the other thing we can then draw from this snippet on screen here is, do you notice that the number of PCIe lanes and memory channels doubles to the model with double the I/O dies? Well, that tells you that each one of these I/O dies gives you 4 DDR5 channels, 32 PCIe 5.0 lanes, and 16 PCIe 6.0 lanes as well. Meaning that if I just transition here to this mockup, this is what I could see a Venice SP7 product looking like. And I've already directly been told by multiple sources that they expect AMD to go to 256 cores for Venice SP7. And if you get, well, 2 core chiplets per one of these I/O dies, I think, yeah, this could be what this looks like. And by the way, if you add that all up, that would give you a total of 16 memory channels, which, by the way, lines up with what other people have leaked on Twitter for the memory channels for SP7, 128 PCIe 5.0 lanes, and 64 Gen 6 PCIe lanes as well. Now, again, I want to emphasize that what you're looking at on screen right here, I cannot rule out that the SP7 variant of Venice actually uses its own larger separate I/O dies from the smaller socket variants. But again, I think the overall product could look quite a lot like this no matter what, and so I still thought I would show this as the mock-up. Additionally, remember, each one of those 32-core chiplets, you can go up to 256 cores, I believe, with how this is panning out, but you could also swap some of these out for AI engine dies, FPGA dies for specific customers, networking dies, and I'm sure a whole host of other products as well, meaning that this is going to be quite a modular family of server products. And I guess I'll also highlight that I believe these 32-core chiplets that are rather large and unified are likely utilizing the 2nm node. And then from the previous leak I've already talked about from September, there's also 3nm versions of Venice as well that I think will have 16-core chiplets likely on Ryzen. And the only other thing I really have to call out here is, and I've said this before in a few words on Broken Silicon, but I still have not seen a single document mention Zen 6C. Only ever is Zen 6 mentioned, and so I suspect that either AMD wants to stop distinguishing between C and standard cores for marketing reasons, which I'll talk about in a second, or that fundamentally the concept of C cores is obsolete with Venice, that they may be just more expensive, denser chiplets. Like they can fit more cores into a 2nm chiplet, but that, well, they may be clocked lower than 3nm. They might not be clocked as much lower as you'd think. I think it's either one of those things, and I could believe either scenario. And so, after putting all that new info in front of you, what else do I have to say about it? Well, I will say this. While Venice EPYC products are going to be moving to new sockets, SP7 and SP8 for server customers, I am actually under the impression that Zen 6 will continue to use AM5 for consumer Ryzen products. Now, I can't be 100% sure of that quite yet, so if that ends up not being true, please don't kill me. But none of my contacts believe that Zen 6 will be moving to AM6, and the fact that Zen 6 isn't going past DDR5, right? They're not using DDR6 with Venice. Well, and the majority of their PCIe is still going to be Gen 5. To me, that tells me that most likely there's really no reason to move to a new socket for the consumer products. Again, SP7, SP8 will support PCIe Gen 6, but they don't need to put Gen 6 into the I/O die that Ryzen uses on AM5. And, well, it seems like Zen 6 still just uses DDR5. I really do think that Zen 6 will then therefore stay on AM5 for consumers, but it will move to a new socket for server customers. And so I think a lot of people are getting ready to talk about how Zen 7 moves to AM6. But that's also where I got to jump in here and say that, well, I cannot say there isn't going to be a Zen 7. I can say that to this day, I still have not seen a single document mention a Zen 7. And heck, even that Xbox leak that came out still only mentioned Zen 6, even though that console would clearly be coming out when Zen 7 is ready. And so I have to say this. I really do think there is a chance that Zen 6 could be the last Zen. And in fact, one of my sources directly warned me today that there's a pilot program at AMD where they are working on the successor to Zen 6 that will move to three entirely new core types. One that's optimized for performance, one that's optimized for density, and one that's optimized for efficiency. And so if you're AMD and you're working on a new family of core architectures that are all different, that would probably be a good time to move past Zen branding, especially if it moves to a new AM6 or whatever they end up calling it platform. And so I guess we'll have to see, but at a minimum for now, what I would say is AMD had 3 architectures that use DDR4 on AM4. Zen 1, Zen 2, and Zen 3. Remember, Zen Plus wasn't really fundamentally a new architecture past Zen 1. And then with AM5, I think they're going to have 3 architectures again that use DDR5. Zen 4, Zen 5, and Zen 6. And then after that, it seems like they may evolve into something completely different to compete with Intel's Nova Lake. And, well, I guess the last thing then to discuss is, all right, so I know that there's 32 core CCDs, likely on 2 nanometer, for EPYC with Zen 6, and I believe there's going to be 16 core CCDs on 3 nanometer that will be used for Ryzen products on AM5. Do I actually think they're going to give you more than 16 cores on AM5 with Zen 6? I actually still don't know, and I think there is a chance that, well, AMD could give you 2 16-core 3-nanometer chiplets for Zen 6 on AM5. I also think there's a chance they may just have like one large unified 16-core chiplet on AM5, and then maybe they just try to shove an AI engine or something there next to it for consumer Ryzen. Because, well, I honestly think that right now AMD isn't sure if there's any point in going past 16 cores for consumers, because as much as some vocal people online say they want it, AMD still sees a lot of apps where scaling diminishes quite a bit past 32 threads, and I'm suspecting that AMD is thinking right now, by the time a lot of apps can even use more than 32 threads, are AI engines going to be a better way to scale performance on desktop in addition to 16 cores anyways? Like, if we were to bring out 32 cores with Zen 5 or Zen 6, in 2027, might it not have been better just give them 16 cores in an AI engine? I think that's something that AMD is honestly considering right now. And, well, honestly, if you check the Amazon CPU bestsellers, you can see that nobody really wants anything more but the fastest cores you can get. No joke, Intel can't even get people to pay more than they do for a 7800 X3D, which has 8 big cores, over the i7-13700K that also has 8 big cores. Heck, even the 5800 X3D is selling for almost the same price, meaning that nobody wants to pay a cent for those E-cores. They just want to pay per P-core, and they're ignoring the E-cores. And I also think it's worth emphasizing that 2 of Intel's best-selling CPUs on Amazon right now actually only have 4 E-cores, and only one of them has 8 E-cores. None of the top selling Intel CPUs on Amazon right now have 12 or 16 E-cores. People want as many P-cores as you can give them, and they don't want the E-cores. And so if AMD looks at that, I think there's a decent chance they may conclude we should just stick with 8 cores in the mid-range and maybe give them extra features. And then in the high end, give them 16 cores clocked as fast with as much cache as possible, because at least right now the market is showing it doesn't really want more than that. And therefore, I must also conclude, or at least advise AMD, that if they do feel pressured from Intel next year, pressured enough to bring out a 24-core Zen 5 product, like I've been told and leaked before that they could do if they wanted to, well, that product would have 16 C cores. I would advise AMD to just call it a 24-core and say what the base clocks are for all-core boost, and then for like 8-core boost, 4 and 1-core boost like Intel does, and then call it a day. Because I do believe that calling their C cores a different core type than their main cores is damaging them in marketing. Because if you actually look at the performance, AMD has shared this, I'm putting it on screen right now, C cores don't perform worse than the non-C cores. In fact, in the right scenarios, they actually perform with higher IPC. And I think it's a mistake to call them something else, because you see all these websites saying these are AMD's E cores, even though these cores are just big cores that happen to be optimized for density and actually sometimes even offer higher IPC than the non-C cores. And that's what I would advise them to do, and that's what I suspect they're going to do moving forward. When Strix comes out, I wouldn't be surprised if they call it a 12-core and don't talk about the C parts of it, because it's clearly just causing negative confusion for them. And yeah, that's going to do it for this video. If you want to hear more about what I think about upcoming AM5 products, the longevity of the platform, and even what Intel is doing with their motherboards, well, consider supporting Moore's Law is Dead on Patreon. Just $2 will get you access to a new die shrink that came out today that is over an hour-long discussion of all of these subjects that I'm talking about here. And there's hundreds of other die shrink episodes that never have any ads as well. We cannot do this without our patrons. Consider giving us, well, as much money as we would need to buy a can of tuna every month just to get access to all of that other content. And otherwise, no matter what, if you did make it this far though, thank you at least for watching.